How's it going, everyone? Welcome to the third episode of the Flight Time podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration. So here, we made a video back in the beginning of the summertime. I guess it was maybe a quarter of the way through the summertime. Remember, we sat down here in my basement. Yeah, and we spoke about how the FAA came out with this brand new rule that hobbyists could not fly in controlled airspace. So if there was an airspace that was controlled by some sort of, air traffic control tower, you were unable to fly. You weren't able to call them up and get permission. But there was one caveat. The FAA said that they were going to come out and they were going to make Lank available for hobbyists.
Right. And I know a lot of people, when this was first announced, were really, really pissed off because they didn't know how long it was going to take. And if you think about other rules and the FAA, it usually takes them quite a while to get moving on any of this stuff.
Yes. They are a very archaic, I guess they're not they're a very archaic organization. They're a very archaic administration.
Yeah, and they're definitely archaic, very slow moving.
I mean, even when you take your Part 107 test, it took almost 2 months for me to just get the card in the mail. I mean, so long.
Yeah, I remember I thought they lost mine. And then you remember the government had that shutdown for that period of time.
Yes.
And then people that took their test really had to wait a long time. But it just doesn't make sense for an agency that deals with things that are so, I guess futuristic.
Yeah.
They move at a very, very slow snail's pace for everything. It's so weird.
I feel like there's a lot of pushback from people who fly drones, like towards the FAA. Like a lot of people kind of hate the FAA in a sense. There are people out there, of course. Most of the people obey the laws and the rules that are put in place by the FAA when it comes to flying drones. But there are quite a good amount of people out there that just kind of say, to hell with the FAA. They go on, they fly how they want to. And I'm sure that there was probably a good amount of people. Maybe they weren't aware of the news, or maybe they just said, I don't really care. But there probably were a lot of hobbyists that flew in controlled airspace that didn't have their Part 107 this summer.
And again, I think it really reverts back to the fact that unlike police or any other agency that is actively enforcing rules and regulations, there isn't somebody driving around in like a little white car around neighborhoods saying, hey, son, you're not allowed to fly that drone here. There's nobody that's, actively doing that. I mean, maybe in some cases there could be somebody that's actively doing it. I mean, I've heard of people getting the FAA called on them, get a request to appear at a local airport or something, but I don't know of anybody that's, going around actively patrolling things.
Well, have you ever been asked for your Part 107 flying a drone?
I have never been asked for my Part 107. You know what's funny too is I wear a little vest, my little neon green vest when I'm out there like doing my houses, and nobody says anything. I don't put the hard hat on because I think that'd just be a little bit.
Wait, you actually wear a vest?
Yeah, I wear a vest, man.
That's awesome.
Well, in some of these neighborhoods, people think you're spying. I just don't want my drone to get shot down or something. So
yeah, well, no, and that makes sense. That's a federal offense, though, right? If you shoot down a drone.
100%. I mean, would it make great content? Absolutely, but I don't want it to happen because I need it like every day.
Yeah, well, there was one time where I got asked for my Part 107. I've said it probably a dozen times on this podcast back when it was the Overcast. And I've also probably said it a few times on my own personal YouTube channel that I've gotten the police called on me quite a few times as I'm flying my drone just because, people don't know what I'm doing. I don't know. It's always something different every single time. And each time I talk to them and they're like, all right, just stay safe, whatever, and then they're on their way. One time I was shooting photos of an apartment building, doing a roof inspection. They were getting a new roof put on, so I was shooting some photos for them, and the police showed up. Apparently somebody on the inside of the apartment building thought that I was spying on people. So the police came, handed them the card, he actually knew like about drones. He owned a Mavic, so I think that might be the only reason I got asked for my Part 107. But any other time that the police have come, whether it be flying over, near the Ben Franklin Bridge. I remember one time I was flying near the Ben Franklin Bridge. The police showed up. They didn't ask if I had my Part 107, although I wasn't flying for business purposes. That was more for like casual enjoyment, just flying around having fun. But yeah, I guess to go back to your point, there's really nobody that is enforcing these rules coming from the FAA. But as you guys can see by the title, right, the FAA finally did something right, and they finally instituted this length system for drone pilots. We both said in that video that towards the end of the summer, we were going to get this. It is definitely towards the end of the summer. So the FAA finally delivered on something on time.
I think they didn't really have much of a choice not to do this. They had to get it done. Otherwise, if you think about it from the FAA's perspective, they make a lot of money off of hobbyist registrations per month. Oh, yeah. I don't know what the exact figure is, and we'll probably never know, but it's $5 per every pilot that registers their drone. Am I right? It's $5 per pilot. So, drone hobby, every time somebody registers, and I don't know how many people actually comply to that, but I know the vast majority of hobbyists that I've talked to have done this. And that's a good amount of money for them. So for them to stunt the hobby basically by saying, hey, you can't fly within controlled airspace is a bit of a big ordeal.
Yeah, and I'm sure that there would have been like an upheaval if this didn't come by the end of the summer, like this Lang system. For sure. For those who are wondering what it is, basically it's instant authorization to fly in controlled airspace. It's not every single airspace, right? It doesn't cover every single airspace.
There's limitations. So you can either use Kitty Hawk or Air Maps. Both of them will allow you to gain authorization. So to give you an idea, if you're a 107 pilot, all you have to do is enter in your license information for Kitty Hawk. So it asks for your 107 license. You enter it in, you draw a map on the airspace. It'll show you so let's say I'm near Tampa Airport, for instance, and it tells me basically the ceilings as I get closer to the airport. And the ceiling is from the elevation from the ground to, let's say, however close the airport is. And it goes down and it goes all the way to let's say 50 feet in elevation, all the way up to on the outskirts of the airport, 400 feet. And depending on if you're in an approach pattern, whatever, there's a lot of great videos on this, but basically you have to draw and outline your flight path or the sector that you're looking to make your flight within. And then the airport is going to either say yay or nay for your authorization. And I don't necessarily know it's the airport approving it. I believe it's just the FAA is predetermining this information. I'm sure it gets relayed to the airports themselves.
Yeah, and look, I think that even though there was this little blip, like this short amount of time where hobbyists weren't able to fly in controlled airspace, they've just made the process so much easier. I mean, rather than having to now call the air traffic control tower, which I've done, and it's a pain. I actually made a video where I called them up live. It's a pain. They ask for so much information. Sometimes you get bounced around from person to person to person until you talk to the right guy, and then finally you give him the information. But just being able to do it right from your phone is so much easier. And considering I've been doing it, for about a year now as a Part 107 pilot, it's like I would never ever want to just call them up because it would just take so much more time.
Yeah, I'm glad that doesn't happen. And with my airport, it's a small airport. We don't even have a tower anymore. But now the authorizations are digital, and it's digital because it gets approved to the FAA. The FAA just communicates to the airport. And honestly, I wonder if they even say anything to the airport at that point. It's just it's a really small operation. I think the biggest thing we have flying out of my airport is the Coast Guard, to be honest.
I'm sure that there's some sort of software application that they have on their computer inside of the air traffic control tower where, it just populates and lets them know of flights around the area. Here's something that I thought of, and this is getting away from the FAA. But imagine if you had a DJI drone, and everybody has a DJI account, right? It's your email. Well, what if you could create like a friends list within the DJI app, and you could see when other people are flying, you could see what drone they're flying, where they're flying, and then if you're going to be flying together, you can see their telemetry and you can see where they're at on the map. How cool would that be?
See, that would be awesome, especially like when you and I fly, because what do we do right now when we're flying together? We're sitting there calling out our altitude. So that way, you know, because it's so crazy if you think about it, like we're in this big sky, this big open sky, and we're afraid of colliding with one another, but we're constantly calling out our altitude, our speed, just so we're never on the same plane, I guess.
Yeah.
No pun intended. That way we can make sure we never have an, in-air accident. I would never want to do that, but but that would be great, because then I can just see where you're at and I wouldn't have to call it out, and I would just always be able to avoid, the different altitudes. I mean, that would be so cool. I don't know why we don't have that yet.
So you and I, right, when we're flying together, it's easy. We communicate back and forth, but I've been in instances where I've been flying with 10 people at the same time, 5, 10, 15 people at the same time, especially at spin up, right? When everybody was flying in the stadium, it was chaos.
It was.
And look, you can go to this like certain extent of yelling out to each other what your altitudes are. Some of it kind of makes it a little bit fun, being able to fly with other people, yelling back and forth what your altitude is, where you're located, things like that. But then there's other times where I'll go up to something, I'll be shooting a photo, I'll be like, yo, check this out. And then they'll be like, oh, you're so close to me. That actually just happened to me. I had some guys come down from New York. We were flying around, and I was taking photos of this big sign. And some guy was like, oh, I'm by the sign. And I'm like, well, I'm by the sign too. So if I was able to just look at my map, glance there really quickly, potentially see where he's at, be able to see his telemetry, so like his altitude, I think that would be perfect. Now, there's always people that don't want to give away their data. So that's why I said the friends list, right? Ken literally just shook his head. In my opinion, look, in this age, or in this day and age, we have barely anything that we're able to hide anymore.
Privacy doesn't exist. We're on Facebook. I mean, I'm saying things, just in conversation with you via text message. Next thing I know, I'm looking at my Facebook feed and I'm seeing advertisements for it. If that doesn't scare you, the drone shouldn't. But here's something that I think should be implemented into applications by now, because obviously we have Kitty Hawk, we have, the air maps data, and then of course before you fly is available. The fact that I can't link my 107 or be able to request authorizations for airspace directly from no matter what drone it is, whether it be an Autel drone or a DJI drone, is a little bit annoying. I hate the fact that I have to use an application outside of my flight app. I just want it all in one. I hate having all these multiple applications. It's stupid. And, I hate to really keep harping on it, but these flight apps have TFR data when they begin and end, and that would be integrated into our flight applications. So again, there would be better pilot awareness across the board. And, for me, this has to happen. That's something that definitely needs to happen. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I thought I heard at one point DJI was looking into something like that. I could be mistaken though.
Yeah. Well, look, I think it's just like, at the end of the day, man, if you know somebody who's really into flying drones, they've got like 10 apps devoted to flying drones on their phone. Like for me, just on one page here, I've got Air Map, I've got Kitty Hawk, I've got DJI Pilot, DJI Go, I've got the Parrot Free Flight app. I've got all of these apps, and also like a weather app, just a generic. I use Dark Sky. So I've got all of these apps that help me fly my drone, and I would love if everything just integrated right within the DJI Go app. Like,
yeah, exactly. And the other thing too is like, they need to have like better communications on events happening, and especially weather. I think is important to have within an accurate weather app for wind, for the wind speeds. I think that would be ideal, because I rely on like dark weather, and I use Carrot Weather. I don't know if you've ever used that, but it's pretty good for like, tracking wind gust. Those things I look at every time before I fly. And more importantly, when I'm shooting, because I want to know, which way the sun's facing on a house or something. So I use a couple apps like that, but they just need to do it, man. They need to do it.
I've recently been carrying an anemometer in my backpack.
Really?
Yeah.
That's, I have a few of them. I haven't used them. I think, who gave me one? Rick Halber sent me one
nice.
When you and I were testing some stuff.
Yeah.
He sent me one.
it's nice because you can see the wind speed, but you don't know what the wind speed is 100 feet above you. So it's good, but it's also,
it gives you an average, I guess. I don't know. Like when we're sitting on a rooftop, like when we're on that rooftop that one night, getting ready to get some shots, it's like, it was a bit windy. I'm not going to lie. I sort of had in the back of my mind, it's a little gusty. But man, the Mavic 2 Pro is just such a beast in the wind.
I know.
Like, I never even freaking worry about anything with that drone.
I know. And you know what? We don't have much wind right now. I feel like there's like a slight breeze during the summertime. But I think back during the fall, man, the breeze is killer. The wind gusts are nuts. You know what I like about Drone Deploy? They have their own app market, and it allows you to integrate other applications right with Drone Deploy. It's incredible. And maybe DJI doesn't do the same thing, like maybe they don't come out with an app market, but that integration is so key. You can integrate Air Map right with Drone Deploy. You can have Air Map. Where am I going with this? You can have Air Map talk with Drone Deploy directly, and I can also have Air Data talk directly with Drone Deploy. So Air Data is a way to store like flight logs and stuff like that. So it takes all the flight logs right from Drone Deploy and adds it to my Air Data account. It's beautiful.
Here's what I'm thinking, like with DJI and drones. Like I don't necessarily think we've peaked with hardware, but I think what they can start doing is taking sort of an Apple-esque approach to things and start maybe doing more with software, like focus more on software iterations and extend those software updates to some of the older drones, and then say, okay, well, from this drone on, you're going to get the new features, but still do some better support for the older products. I think that would be cool. I think they should focus more on making the software a more of a pleasant experience for the user base.
Well, you know what kind of sucks about DJI is they have like these different teams working on the different drones. So like they have one team working on the Phantom 4, one team working on the Mavic, one team working on the Inspire. Sometimes they have a different team working on like the Phantom 4 Pro and the Phantom 4. So these teams work separately, and some of them introduce these features, right? Like a great feature that was implemented on like the Spark and the original Mavic Pro, only those two drones, is dynamic home point. So the home point automatically updates every 10 seconds. And this is great if you're on a boat. It's great if you're going to be frequently moving. I mean, it's a really, really great feature. And the fact that it's only on the Spark and the Mavic Pro and hasn't been added to all of these other drones that we fly, kind of crazy.
Yeah, that is pretty crazy, because dynamic home points saved me a few times.
It's
already
huge.
Being on a boat. But
huge.
You know how I feel about return to home, and not, especially when I'm on a boat, I'm constantly sitting there tracking my drone.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I don't even play with battery on a boat because I'm accounting for the fact that I may have a struggle getting it landed. But
yeah, I'll always come back at like 40%.
I want to like ask a question to you here, because the FAA came through on this and what I would say is a pretty reasonable time frame. There's obviously some other things that they've discussed throughout the year that they want to do. Obviously, we're still waiting on night waivers. And if you look, like, to try to get approved for a night waiver now, you're looking at like, a 4-month wait to get a waiver approved from what I'm seeing. We've never heard of any sort of accidents happening at night with a drone. And now you have companies like LoomCube that have created anti-collision devices that you can basically attach to your drone, any drone for that matter. I just don't understand why that's still a hang up at this point.
First of all, man, let me just say that LoomCube light, they really could have done so much better on that thing.
I didn't get one. They reached out to me like recently, and I basically told them to pound salt. Like,
it's just a light, man.
It is a light, but it's like, it's just a fact. Like, it's just a light. Like, they made it seem like it was this top secret thing, and I don't know. They sort of rubbed me the wrong way. Like, you don't do that to the Dobo.
Well, okay, so yeah, there's two things that the FAA has stated that they want to work on. I'm pretty sure we had a podcast entirely dedicated to these two things, right? The two things that they want to do, that they want to, I guess, potentially change in the future, maybe get rid of. I don't know what their intentions are, because they've just kind of talked about this, or they've, I guess, brought up the idea of changing flying at nighttime and flying over people. specifically for Part 107 pilots. Nighttime flight, I think as long as you're going to be able to put some sort of anti-collision lighting on the drone, I think you'll be fine. Now, I think that this should be something going forward that all drones have. Look, if you've got a Spark, okay, maybe you don't put an anti-collision light on that, but if you've got a drone like the Mavic 2 Pro, it should just come integrated. They've got the lights on the bottom, but integrate a light into the body and make it look clean, because otherwise I've got to take the Lume Cube and use Velcro to put it on my drone.
Put that light on the back half of it, so it's not going to interfere with, let's say, the camera or something, or in the battery. Or just put it on the battery.
Maybe, but also that could also raise the price of batteries. Then you're buying multiple batteries. That could be a pain. But I mean, also just make the LEDs already on the drone better. I mean, look, those LEDs are already pretty bright, but they're small. I mean, if they were able to make those LEDs bigger, then we'd have something that would be more substantial. And it's on the side of the drone, so it could be seen from like anywhere. So that's my thing. Nighttime flight, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of flying at nighttime. I think it's cool to like see the lights on the drone and stuff, but you've got to really have a lot of light to be shooting to make it viable.
There's only one reason why you'd fly at night, and it's in somebody who's in like a suburban area isn't going to really have much of a reason to fly at night. Now, you go into a city like Tampa, Philly, like those are areas where, okay, we've got something to work with. There's some cool scenes. Flying at night's pretty awesome in that case.
Yeah, and I agree with that. But still, I usually just stick to photos, but most of these drones have smaller cameras, smaller sensors, not the best in low light. Of course, we've got the 1-inch sensor that can give you better performance in low light, but still, I'm just not fond of it. I think it's cool flying line of sight, whipping around, taking some long exposure photos. That's about it. My biggest thing, though, is flying over people. And we've already seen waivers granted out to these people who are doing work with their drone to fly over crowds of people.
And they have those parachutes on.
Exactly. They need two things. They need the parachute as well as a buzzer, so that if the drone does fall and the parachute's deployed, then the buzzer goes off so people know that it's coming down from the sky. So, I mean, that's a great step forward. Now, here's the thing. If you want one of those systems with like the buzzer and the parachute, it's like $1,500.
Yeah, I won't fly over people. Not for $1,500. I'll just,
what if it's part of your job though? Like CNN, I think that they were the first people to get this waiver to fly over people. That is something that is invaluable.
If you're working for like a company like CNN or some news outlet, chances are they are providing you possibly providing you with the drone, because think about it. It's cheaper for them to get a drone in the air than it is for a chopper.
That's
true. That's just a reality. And most of these guys, they have mobile news crews that are like ready to leap into action at a moment's notice. They're quite literally Minutemen driving around wherever, and they can get a drone deployed from one of these vans. They're probably going to own one outright, and they would probably have it. So maybe you don't buy that outright, and they're able to have these waivers. Who knows how they're going to do it. There's so many what ifs. The problem is like there's not anything really clear. And every time they have one of those symposiums, I mean, a portion of it is they're talking about drones, but obviously the FAA is a wider organization and they're handling everything within the airspace. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, we could just be thankful for the fact that they got these authorizations. It's not like they're trying to like starve out the hobby, because I know a lot of people really thought like this was the beginning of the end. And it's not really the case, but it just still really reverts back to like compliance to some of these rules. And people think like we're like, I don't know, fanboys for the fact that we're following rules. But I just don't want to see things taken away for stupidity. That would just pain me like to no end, to be like, wake up one day and be like, oh yeah, we've just said no, can't fly.
Yeah, it's understandable. To your point about these big companies paying for the equipment, it's understandable. I mean, I'm not telling you to go out and buy a $20,000 Matrice, because you can just use the Mavic 2 Pro. So if you're a big corporation and you really have a need to fly over people, I think that this is priced perfectly. I mean, $1,500 to potentially even save money is fine. But here's the thing, is that there's only a few companies doing this. So if there's more parachute companies, then that price will go low. But they know that they almost have this industry by the balls, because they're the ones that are making this technology.
Yeah, and to that effect, they do have it by the balls, and it's sort of sad, but it is what it is at the end of the day, unfortunately.
Yep. Well, I think that back to the point of these two things that the FAA want to introduce, flying over people, flying at nighttime, both of those things, I could see how it would be dangerous. But just like you said, how many times have you heard of an accident happening at nighttime with a drone? And also, speaking on the other point, how many people have you heard dying from drones dropping out of the sky?
None, to the best of my knowledge. None.
Think about how reliable these drones are, and think about how many times you even hear of drones falling from the sky. Now, of course, there's stories of like the GoPro Karma when it first came out, tumbling from the sky, and that makes sense. Maybe even they could have approved models of drones that you're able to fly over people. And if you're going to do some sort of instant authorization like Lank, you say which drone model you're using. And if it's the correct one, if it's one that's been tested by the FAA, if it's been vetted, then you've got authorization. But if you're going to be flying like a rinky-dink GoPro Karma, no sir.
Yeah, it's sort of like, I personally think you have a better chance of getting hit by lightning than you do by getting hit by a drone.
Yeah, right?
Falling out of the sky. I mean, I would take those odds any day.
I mean, the parts are great. These motors aren't going to give out. We also see drones that have more than 4 motors, like hexacopters, so that if one motor goes out, then you can fly.
Yeah, but I mean,
so redundancy.
With a unique drone, you're not really flying very far at all.
Yeah.
Or in some cases, you're lucky to take off. Yeah, those are totally safe.
Even with the Inspire 2, you've got 2 batteries. So if one battery fails, your drone's not falling out of the sky. It's redundancy. Exactly. And that's the biggest thing.
I love redundancy.
Me too. That's the biggest thing about drones. Dude, not even speaking about drones. My camera, my A7 III, I was shooting and one of my memory cards became corrupted. I've got no idea what happened, but I plugged it in and all the files were there, but they were not able to be opened. So I went to my second SD card slot. Boom, all the files were there. I was fine, but still, man.
That never happens on a Windows machine, though.
No?
No. It could fix those files to be read again.
I was just wondering what laptop you're using.
Shut up.
So, back to the FAA, kind of coming through. Do you remember how many people commented on that video we posted? Which, if you guys are interested in watching, I'll leave a link down in the description.
There was quite a few, man. Quite a few.
The title of it, what was it? Don't be afraid, or something like that, of the FAA. You know what? I'm gonna have to look it up because it's killing me. But here's my thing: is that all of these people are like, where did it say that they're gonna institute Lank at the end of the summer? I don't believe it. And there's so many people getting upset. But I mean, I hate to say it, but we told you so. We were right. The FAA actually came through. Are you looking it up, or am I looking it up?
No, I'm sorry. I was just looking up. I was trying to look it up. Let
me see here. So when we sat down, when was that? Was that in the beginning of this summer?
That was FAA rules.
New FAA drone rules for hobbyists. Don't stress.
Yeah, that's what it said.
And if I click on the video, first of all,
on it too.
Honestly, not many people.
16,000 views.
Yeah, not many people disliked. I do see some people saying, don't stress. Oh, well, actually, this one said, don't stress, BS. Our hobby is being systematically killed by lobbyists from the commercial drone industry. This is just the beginning.
Here's one from somebody who commented on your video. This was a week ago. His name is Tom. I don't know. Tom,
so he just recently commented on it?
Yeah, and he says, do not comply. Use some common sense when flying. F tests, fees, registrations, etc. Fight garbage legislation or it'll spread. Another 3-letter federal agency overstepping its boundaries. F the FAA. That's such an ignorant comment just because like they're literally in charge of lives, flying over our country every single day. And it's like comments like that, I scratch my head. I'm like, why did you buy a drone?
People, I saw somebody say about the regulation of Boeing. They said regulate drones, but not Boeing.
we can only help what we can help. I mean, it's just.
Here's something that I think is going to vastly change the way that we fly drones, and that is AirSense from DJI with the ADS-B receiver. That's going to be huge. And I really wish it was something that they could implement into older drones, release a firmware update. But I guess there's a physical piece of hardware that the drone needs in order to receive the signal. I get right? Am I correct in saying that?
Correct. So ADS-B, it's going to be an ADS-B receiver. So
it doesn't send the signal out. It only receives the signal. It's not sending the signal
out. You're only receiving a signal in, if I'm not mistaken.
Exactly.
So you'll be able to at least see crafts within the vicinity. The other thing too is, like, you know, for me, it's not even the planes that are an issue, because right now the only planes I can see, you know, on AirSense was commercial liners, and that does me no good. That does me no good.
You see it when we were flying the Enterprise Dual. You see it on the map, and you look up in the sky, and it's like 10,000 feet high. It's like, come on.
But that does us no good, because the scariest thing to me, like when we're flying in the city, is the choppers. The helicopters are the scariest thing, and it's like you have to really be listening on radio. And that's one thing I will absolutely commend the group flying out of Brooklyn, because they're listening on radios, and they have somebody that is designated. Their one job is sitting there being a spotter.
Look, man, those guys up in New York, when they fly, they take it so seriously, and I love it. I love flying with them. We've gone up a couple of times, and they're struggling because they've got so many areas where they can't fly.
Well, they're getting it done, and that, you know, and that is saying something. Like, I mean, that's what, like, when people are like, oh, I can't fly, there's an airport. All right, well, you got guys that like literally have not a lot of space to fly or get things done. They're still figuring out a way to get it done. If you want to be a part of this hobby, you find a way to get things done. I mean, that's just how it's got to be.
Exactly. Those guys, I commend them, because they do a really good job, even though some of them are definitely bad eggs flying in areas they definitely shouldn't be. But we'll save that for another video.
Another day, another video. You know what I mean?
You know, so right now the FAA they're good in my book. They've helped out hobbyists. I think that they've actually pulled through this time. I'm really excited to see maybe their next move, because that was the thing that they had to patch up like immediately. They had to bring that. Yep. They had to bring Lank to hobbyists, and I'm really excited to see again what their next step is, because if it's going to be the ability to fly over people, if it's going to be the ability to fly at nighttime, I'm all for it.
Exactly. You know, and I don't want to harp on this like topic too much, because there's not a lot much more to really say. And usually we're keeping our episodes right around 35 to 40 minutes long. I said episodes, but, you know, conversations with all this. But guys, just remember too, if you want your photo to be featured as our backdrop on the podcast, whether it's on Spotify, wherever we're doing it, that's going to be the backdrop for each episode, along with the thumbnail on YouTube. If you do submit them, please use the link down in the description for the email. Send us your cool shots, and we'll, you know, select the ones that we think are, you know, the most eye-catching. Feature it, and give you a shout out in the next podcast.
Yeah, in that email, also go ahead and include your name, of course. I would say name, location. You can also say maybe what it is, because if it's
give us
not
a little
known,
context.
What it is. I'd love to know what drone you're shooting it with, and then like an Instagram handle that I can add in there. So we'll put a little thing in the bottom left corner. That'd be pretty cool, just to because I mean, we've only got like so many photos, and we'll probably run out after a while.
As many episodes. Like, if you haven't heard what we're looking to do, we're looking to roll Monday, Wednesday, Friday, if I'm not mistaken, on episodes. So 7 a.m., 3 days a week. Here on out, we're super pumped to get episodes out. Every 3 episodes a week. We're doing 100%. We're fired up to do these shows.
Yeah, I love this format. I love being able to do audio only. And, you know, there's certain topics that just really can't be discussed in a single YouTube video. So being able to talk about them a little bit more and get 2 different viewpoints on that topic in this long form discussion is awesome. Also, I mean, look, we love to tailor our content to the people watching. So, if you're a 107 drone pilot and you want to see something about drone businesses, let us know. If you're a hobbyist pilot and you just want to know how to get better, let us know, because we've got a ton of topics that we can talk about. And, we say, all right, what do we want to talk about this time? And we come up with something almost immediately. But also it would be great to kind of make sure we're creating and talking about things that you guys actually want to listen to.
Exactly. So that's going to do it for this conversation. So we'll see you Friday.
See you then.